Hey guys, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and this time I'm playing in the Tier 6 Premium Swedish medium tank, the Strv M4257. So this vehicle was just released on Wednesday. I think it was first available to purchase in the shop on Thursday, and so I had a hell of a lot of fun playing this during the live stream. And I'm going to be showing you two games today, both from my first ever day of playing this tank on the live server. And there is one significant difference between playing this tank on the test server and playing it on the live server, and that is that hardly anybody on the test server was playing tiers 4, 5, 6, even 7 tanks. Most of the people are testing out their tier 8 premiums, what they might want to purchase on the live server. And so playing the Strv M4257 on the live server was certainly a different experience. Finally, you get to test the vehicle out when it's not always bottom tier. And I can tell you that this autoloader, well, it doesn't really feel that special when you're shooting at tier 8 tanks. Maybe you can take away a third of their hit points. Maybe more like 40%, and on some vehicles up to 50% of their hit points if they're a tank destroyer. But when you're using this 75mm autoloader against tier 6 and below tanks, it certainly does feel very, very powerful indeed. Now the Strv M42, there are many aspects about this tank which I really don't like. Be it the long reload time on the magazine, even though you do have 600 average damage. Be it the penetration, it's not bad for a 75mm, but it's not exactly incredible at 148mm of penetration. Also, the tank isn't that mobile, 45 kilometers an hour top speed limit, and its specific power ratio is 13.41, and it doesn't get amazing ground resistances like the Cromwell Berlin does, for example, to be able to amplify that rather mediocre specific power. And so I'm telling you a lot of mediocre things really about this tank, and also its armor isn't very good either. Its thickest armor is 55mm on the front of the hull, and its turret armor is 40-20-20. But one thing that is quite nice, I guess, is that the turret armor is quite well angled, and so you do sometimes pull off some ricochets when you're using the mediocre gun depression that this tank has at 6 degrees. So, mediocre, mediocre, mediocre. But when you have an autoloader on this vehicle, it just feels very, very scary indeed for what we're going to be able to do throughout this replay. And that is, hopefully, put in 2 at worst, well, 1 at very worst. You really want to be trying to put in at least 2, preferably 3, and ultimately 4 rounds into a target, or spread between multiple targets. And when you start to do that in the Strv, you only really need to do that about 2 or 3 times to have a very good game. I think a good game in this tank is anything more than, at least for me, and remember this is all just personally what I'm going to be trying to aim for in this tank, anything more than about 1,200 I feel like is a pretty damn good game in the Strv. I mean, that's putting in pretty much about 8 shells into your opponents, right? But that's just 2 magazines, right? If you're doing 1,200 damage in a game, you're just putting in 2 magazines, and so it's just about trying to find those 2 opportunities with an autoloader. Whereas with single shot guns, you have to be constantly looking for many, many, many smaller opportunities. Whereas the Strv is very much about looking for those bursty combats to be able to really excel in this vehicle. So this was a very nice matchup, and the game after this is going to be a very nice matchup. As I said, I had a pain playing this tank against tier 8s on the test server, and an even worse time testing a version of this tank that I don't think a lot of people got to show. Remember that the original M4257, at least in patch 9.15.1 and 9.15.2, had a single shot gun. It did not have an autoloader, and it was absolutely horrific. It was one of the worst tanks I've ever played. I managed to only get about, I think, like 40 or 45% win ratio in my first 40 games. It was really hard to have the influence in the round, well, at least consistently, that I would want to justify purchasing this as a premium tank. And let's be honest, if you're going to be buying one of these, it's most likely because you want to try and train up a Swedish crew for when the Swedish tanks are released, right? And it would have been a very painful experience. Wargaming definitely did the right thing by adding an autoloader to this vehicle, as while I don't feel like it's completely overpowered, I feel like it definitely has a novelty now to it, And it's moments like these that are just very, very satisfying. Here's a T-67, one of the most overpowered tanks tier for tier in the game, and a stat padder's delight. Take him out very efficiently, and we even have a 4th round to put into the A43 afterwards. And that really is the dream scenario for this vehicle. Taking out a very dangerous tank on the enemy team. Looks like that guy might be a new account, as he is playing quite well. And then also having another round to put into something else. But look at the mobility. It just doesn't feel like a medium. This feels like either a fast heavy or definitely it's thoroughly limited with regards to its mobility. And the 6 degrees of gun depression as well. It's just, this vehicle's a very funny one. A lot of people are likening it to a tier 6 T69. I think that's a pretty good analogy. Some people have called it a tier 6 AMX-50B, I think on the stream on Thursday, and I definitely disagreed with that. It's definitely more like one of the American autoloading medium tanks, but it doesn't really have the reload that they do. It has the delay between the shells, that's for sure, which can be very satisfying indeed when, for example, an A43 on the enemy team is ill-prepared, doesn't know that you have an autoloader, and just takes too long to try and harass you. Now, if maybe later on in the patch, or after he's had some experience dealing with the Swedish tier 6 premium medium tank, that player might have known, okay, he's fired off his shots, he's put a couple into me, he's killed the artillery, now I'm going to catch him reloading. And maybe it's early days for this vehicle yet, and maybe people aren't quite figuring out that you really have to punish this tank after you know it's reloading. Or while it's reloading, hopefully. Not after it's reloaded. That'd be the worst time to engage the Stridsvagn. So we picked up 5 kills, 2,600 damage. This is a great game. This is double what I would call a good game here. And look at this Churchill just going down swinging at the end. How hilarious is it for this guy? I was thinking, is he going to make a fool of me and get a Kolobanov's medal here? And I'm just trying to lock down his tracks, but he actually manages to do 134 damage to me. I love these new indicators, if only for just using the third-person mode to figure out what's going on. And I was thinking, hey, this is going to be the easiest Top Gun in the world, right, guys? Yep, easiest Top Gun in the world. But this Churchill is a pain to dig out. But it's just a moment. I've had enough of him, and I decided to load an APCR clip, but yeah, I guess we're not getting that Top Gun anymore. So now we're playing on Erlenberg, and I want to break the meta of Erlenberg. How many of you guys hate the kind of counterclockwise circle that happens on Erlenberg, where the team that spawns in the southeast pushes along the east, takes this part of the map, and then the team that spawns towards the northwest pushes down the west and then takes the western part of the map, and then we have like a 12-minute stalemate game that is very, very boring, at least for me, to play. So what I've decided to do is try and push west, and I communicated with my team at the start of the battle to hope that they would come and join us. But unfortunately, it doesn't look like we've had the best of games so far. We've lost a Hellcat, a Panzer IV-H, and also this VZ39. All very good players, so this definitely isn't looking like it's going to be a 79%er anymore. But I guess all the more for me to test, right? So this is what this autoloader does best. How many of you hate OI experimentals? I certainly do. Those things are an absolute little blight at tier 5. And I think we just completely balanced him, that is for sure. That thing is probably one of the most crazy tier 5 tanks. But maybe when it's more bullying tier 3s, 4s and some tier 5s, it certainly doesn't hold up well to the 75mm autoloader that the Stridsvagn has. So 2 rounds into the KV-1S, a third one, will we hit the extra one? Oh wow. What a dream magazine there, 590 damage done to him, and they're not even spotting us. Now I'm not 100% sure right now if I'm the one spotting or if in fact it's these KV-2s that have created this absolute little dirt platoon here, or the T-34 that is spotting for me. But right now I get to shoot at a TOG, and you know what, I have to apologize, Paul Jingles, I'm really sorry for shooting this TOG here, buddy. But whenever I see a TOG on the enemy team, for me that is just, oh, it's just tasty, right? Oh, come on, everybody likes shooting at that 1,400 hit points, especially KV-2s. I bet you that KV-2 platoon were looking at that TOG with very wide eyes. Now that was a very important moment. Do you see how I went over that ridgeline and I thought about engaging the Stridsvagn that is below me? But that would have been the most stupid thing I could do ever, and possibly would have lost the game for my team if I had done that. Or at least given them a much lower chance of being able to pull through this. because if I'd pushed over there, I would have just been trading blows with the M4257 on the enemy team, who's very likely to do 600 damage to me. But also, I'll have a TOG shooting me from above. I'll have all of those vehicles. So sometimes you have to play a little bit more defensively than you would want. And now that I've taken out all the tanks that are above the M4257, then hopefully I can help my KV2s deal with him, but they don't really need help. They just absolutely brutalized that little Swedish tank and feasted on him like, I don't know, you do when you go to IKEA and eat those hot dogs? I don't know. That's a terrible analogy. We're not going to go there. We're just going to move on with this. So 3 kills and 3,000 damage in 4 minutes. That pretty much was the dream, right? For the M4257. What a result. And I didn't even have to resort to firing any of those filthy APCR rounds. I think I just checked out the likes and the dislikes video ratio on my T110E4. And I think I'm getting some feedback that you guys might not like people firing premium rounds at tier 10. Well, hopefully you guys don't mind it at tier 6. I don't think I've actually fired any. Do you know what? That's hilarious. When I was playing the game just now on Runeberg, right? I was about to reload an APCR clip, and then the Churchill on my team probably sensed it, right? And then he decided to TK me to stop me from having to waste any credits against the Churchill. Alright, so this is just the cleanup. And one thing I'd like to stress is that, fair enough, you just saw me sit in one position and just feast on enemies that frankly weren't shooting back at me, right? And one thing that is very frustrating about the M4257... Oh, that was a beautiful shot there. You're not getting away, Mr. Marder 38, into the drink. But one thing that is very frustrating in this tank is trying to, shall we say, hoover up your opponents at the end of the game. How many of you love these kind of situations where one team has won and then you just get to go around at the end and try and grab as much experience, credits, damage as you can, right? Well, this tank certainly isn't very good at that. Fair enough, it's got an autoloader, but it just doesn't really have the pace to be able to get there in time. But thankfully, if you can put yourself in the mind of the artillery and think where he might be hiding, then it doesn't really matter if you're probably one of the slowest medium tanks at tier 6. You can find him and you can shut him down, securing our 5th kill of the game and 3,200 damage. What a result here. So both of these rounds were from my first day of playing this tank. The first round that we had on Winterberg, you know, is very standard. 2,600 damage, 1,237 base experience points. We managed to get no big hero medals, but some little ones at least. But what kind of credits did we make? Well, we didn't fire any APCR rounds, so we made 54,000 credits profit with a premium count, and if we weren't running a premium count, that would be 33,000 credits profit. But keep in mind that I was resupplying that coffee with cinnamon buns for about 10,000 credits because I buy it when it's on discount, so factor that in if you want to be using a premium consumable. And our second round on Erlenberg was in fact a high caliber for the 3,215 damage that we did, picking up 5 kills. Not much spotting here though. I presume that it was actually these KV2s that were doing a little bit of the vision work for me, but I still think the position that I was in was very important to provide a crossfire on the enemies that were up on that ridge. Hardly any repair cost, no premium rounds fired I think yet again, so only 4,500 credits spent on the vehicle's ammunition resupply, and so 65,000 credits profit and 42,000 with a premium account. Again, factor in the minus 10,000 for the coffee with cinnamon buns. And so all in all, the M4257 is a pretty good tank. It's not amazing, statistically it's very mediocre apart from the autoloader that it gets, but I think the fact that it is a premium tank with an autoloader, and also the fact that it's novel as being the first Swedish vehicle in the game, that definitely at least makes up for this. Now look, this tank certainly isn't going to be a good credit maker. I think this was a bit of a dream of a game, and you won't get these all that often unless you're an excellent player. And even with that, we made 70,000, and after the resupply of ammunition and maybe the consumable, that's 55,000 credits profit. If I was to have a game like this in a tier 8 premium, I would be surprised if I wasn't making 120,000 credits profit. And also I hasten to add that when you do get yourself into a tier 7 or even worse, a tier 8 game in this vehicle, that it's very likely that you're going to have to start firing a few APCR rounds to be able to damage the T29 on the enemy team frontally, or maybe the IS-3. But hopefully this video helps some of you who maybe are sitting on the fence and not sure whether it's worth investing in the first ever Swedish tank. And hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider giving it a like. It really helps the channel out. And let me know in the comments down below if you have picked one of these vehicles up yet, and if you think that it's worth it. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.